I decided to record our lesson today, and I'll post it as soon as I can and let you know so that those of you who are taking the PSAT tomorrow can go ahead and preview it if you want to this evening, and you'll be done. So let's do that, okay? So today, as we're getting ready for our test, which is tomorrow, we're going to talk about themes and symbols in The Great Gatsby, most of which we've already touched on. But I just want to make sure we review them. I'm going to talk about what to study, and I have provided a Kahoot link for you to a Kahoot that should help you to review for the test. So, themes and symbols. All right, if you remember, one of our main themes that we've been talking about is carelessness. And multiple times in the novel, we have talked about how careless these people are, particularly the East Egg people, but really all of the people are careless. Even Nick has signs of carelessness in some of his behaviors, talking about signing his letters, love Nick, when he really doesn't care for the girl, or at least not in that way, as he would say, and some of his treatment of Jordan is perhaps careless too. I've listed a few quotations about carelessness. A lot of them we've talked about. And the basic line, the bottom line on this theme is that people are selfish, that they do what makes them feel good, and they don't put themselves out for other people in this novel. And then the main culprits of carelessness, and the most directly that Fitzgerald puts this theme, is the quotation about Tom and Daisy. They were careless people, Tom and Daisy. They smashed up things and creatures, and then retreated back into their money or their vast carelessness or whatever it was that kept them together, and let other people clean up the mess they had made. And so we've mentioned lots of Tom and Daisy's behaviors that are careless, Daisy not really taking care of her child, and she never says her name in the novel. So, carelessness, theme number one. Theme number two, unchecked consumption or materialism. Remember we said the 1920s was basically one of the first times that materialism really hit a bump. Everybody was making money, and so they were buying things freely. There was also free access to credit, and people were using that to buy things when they hadn't before. So I have some quotations about unchecked consumption and materialism. Our thematic statement is, no amount of money or success will bring fulfillment. So if you remember Nick's nightmare that he had, the woman was dressed in an evening gown. She had expensive jewelry on, but nobody cared about her, and she still seemed to be an unhappy figure. The Valley of Ashes is also in this theme because it is a dumping of industrial ashes that represents the moral and social decay that results from the uninhibited pursuit of wealth. So several things here about purchasing things and really excessive consumption. Also, if you remember, there's a quote about Tom, which is not on this, but I can add it, about the day before the wedding, or the day of the wedding. Tom came to town with 100 people in 4 private cars, hired the entire floor of the hotel, and gave Daisy a string of pearls that was worth $350,000. So, an extreme show of wealth and spending. Thematic concept number 3, emptiness and the elusiveness of the American dream. The thematic statement is, if a person can obtain the American dream, it doesn't deliver what it promises. So if we consider Daisy an anthropomorphism of the American dream, meaning she is the American dream in physical form, her voice was the allure of money, Gatsby has to resort to illegal activities to attain her. During the period when they're together, Gatsby's house is dark and he has to bring in gangsters as servants. They can't live in the open or marry, so it is not a good thing necessarily, a thing of the light, because he is forced into darkness to achieve it. In spite of having money, Gatsby will never be a sophisticated, old money socialite like Daisy and Tom. Like, money does not equal class or social status in this case. And the bay separating Gatsby's house from Daisy's house represents the uncrossable divide in their social standings. Also, if you think about all of the people who come to Gatsby's parties, were wealthy too, but none of them seem to be happy in their lives. They all seem to be avoiding. Thematic concept number 4, reliving the past. And the thematic statement is, a person can't repeat the past, and it will be destroyed if he or she continues to try. And this is one of the ones that Fitzgerald states overtly. He specifically says it. Some themes authors imply, and some they specifically directly state, and this is one that he states. And in fact, here's the quotation, the conversation between Nick and Gatsby, where Nick says, I wouldn't ask too much of her, you can't repeat the past. And Gatsby says, can't repeat the past? Why, of course you can. But we know and remember that Pammy, Daisy and Tom's daughter, is a physical representation of the fact that you cannot erase 5 years. That time happened. That time changed Daisy and Gatsby. They are not the people they were 5 years ago, and you cannot just ignore that. And Pammy stands there as a symbol of that. I have some other quotations down here about repeating the past, including the last line of the novel, which says, so we beat on, boats against the current, borne back ceaselessly by the past. And I think, yeah, I'm going to talk more about that when we get to the green light. Symbols! Daisy's voice. We talked a lot about Daisy's voice and about how it was musical, and I've collected a lot of quotations here about her voice all through the novel. Multiple times she's talks about her singing, how it's thrilling, how it goes, the pitch of it goes up and down. It also is multiple times said that it entices men. So if you see right here, there is an excitement in her voice that men who cared for her found very difficult to forget, a singing compulsion. Her voice compelled me forward breathlessly as I listened. That was Nick speaking, who's saying that he was listening to her breathlessly. Her voice was glowing and singing. The exhilarating ripple of her voice was a wild tonic. So all of these comparisons or of descriptions of it being musical. And then we have that quote that we've talked about. Her voice is full of money, says Gatsby. And Nick says, I never understood it. It was full of money. That was the inexhaustible charm that rose and fell in it, the jingle of it, the cymbal song of it. So, if we put all of these quotations together and about how her voice is musical and how it held men's attention and it compelled them. It says it compelled my attention. That's like it forces the person to pay attention. And one of these quotations, Nick says, well, here it says that voice was a deathless song, meaning it would never end. It goes on and on. And then up here, this quote says, the instant her voice broke off, ceasing to compel my attention, my belief. I felt the basic insincerity of what she had said. That sentence almost makes it like Nick was under a spell while Daisy was speaking, because he said as soon as she stopped speaking, then he thought about what she said and he realized that it was a lie. But while she was speaking, it made him believe her. So if you take all of these things together, a musical voice, something that compels men, something that never will end and is deathless, so is eternal. I believe that Daisy is a siren, and if you studied Greek mythology, sirens were creatures who lived in the ocean, and they sang to men on ships, and the men would be drawn to them, and they would crash their ships on their rocks, and they would die. They would, the ships would be crashed and destroyed, and the men would drown. And I think Daisy is a siren, and her voice is evidence of this, and Gatsby is in her spell, and she basically draws him to her death. And as Daisy is an example of the American dream, therefore, the endless, relentless pursuit of only a material success, as is part of the American dream portrayed here, will only lead to death and destruction. Yep, pretty heavy stuff. But also gorgeous. Like, Fitzgerald has beautiful descriptions and symbols and motifs throughout this novel. Like, we can talk about this novel forever, basically, which is what people have been doing since they've been talking about it for 100 years, basically. Next symbol, the green light. The green light is physically or literally the light at the end of Daisy's dock. So therefore it represents Daisy because it's at her house. It also represents Gatsby's dream or the American dream. It represents money, and it represents envy. All the things that you guys had already come up with because you're very smart. And I have 3 quotations here about the green light. The first one is when we saw Gatsby for the first time, when he was reaching out towards the dock in the nighttime. The second one is when Gatsby is with Daisy and they have finally been reunited, and he looks at the light and maybe realizes now that it's not magical anymore because now Daisy's with him, so the light has less significance. And the last one is the last paragraph, or part of the last paragraph of the novel, and I wanted to talk about that. Gatsby believed in the green light, the orgastic future that year by year recedes before us. It eluded us then, but no, that's no matter. Tomorrow we will run faster, stretch our arms farther, and one fine morning. So we beat on, boats against the current, borne back ceaselessly into the past. Yeah, it's a pretty heavy way to end the novel. So, in this case, Gatsby believing in the green light, which is the orgastic future. So the orgastic future is, like, this word is kind of like from orgasm, so it's amazing, it's the fantastic future that's in front of us, that year by year recedes before us. So every year it gets further away from us. No matter how hard we move toward it, it keeps moving backwards. The line keeps moving, okay? So if you think about a finish line, and a person's running toward it, but the finish line keeps moving back and keeps moving back. It eluded us then, but that's no matter. That means we couldn't catch it last time. We couldn't catch it before. We didn't catch it last year. But it doesn't matter, because tomorrow we'll run faster, we'll stretch farther, and one day, and we have that dash. Whoa, and that dash means so much, right? So this is the idea of it doesn't matter how far away or that the line keeps moving. We'll get faster, we'll get smarter, we'll stretch further, we'll do whatever it is. And one morning, the little dash means, one day we'll finally get there, is that optimism. And Fitzgerald's saying, like, that's what we think, but really, we're never going to get there. We won't get there. And so we beat on, boats against the current. So if you have a current, usually you will want to go with it because it makes it easier. If you're rowing against a current, it makes it harder to move your boat. And the current is pushing that boat back away from the goal, borne back ceaselessly, meaning never ending, into the past. So you just keep getting pushed back and pushed back because you're focused on whatever that ideal thing was that's in the past that you will never be able to achieve. Not exactly the rah-rah speech we would normally like. Valley of the Ashes, another symbol, we touched on that. The beginning of chapter 2 describes it, and we've already talked about what that is. And then Dr. T.J. Eckelberg, which is the billboard with the giant glasses that is overlooking the Valley of the Ashes. And he represents God, who is always watching and always judging. And we have several quotations here about Dr. T.J. Eckelberg when he shows up in the novel, when the billboard shows up. He's just a billboard, so he doesn't really do things. But Wilson is the one who directly connects him with God. The eyes of Dr. T.J. Eckelberg, which just emerged pale and enormous from the dissolving night. God sees everything, repeated Wilson. And if you remember in the novel, Wilson holds Myrtle to the window and says to her, God sees what you're doing. God sees everything you're doing. And he doesn't like it, basically. So that's the last symbol there. All right. Going back to our slide, what to study. All right. So make sure that you are reviewing those study questions you have. Review the people, your character list, who they are, what they did, what their important characteristics are. Make sure you know where the people live. Do they live in West Egg, East Egg, Valley of the Ashes? Where do they live? Which one of them is old money? Which one of them is new money? Remember, new money is also called nouveau riche, which means new rich. Remember and review who is sleeping with whom. What is the point of view of the novel? It's first person, right? Because it's narrated by Nick. And yeah, you should be in a good place if you review those things and know who everybody was and the important traits that we talked about. So there's a Kahoot on the slideshow for you that you can review right here. It has a nice wide variety of questions for you. Of course, if you have any questions at all, text me through Remind, send me an email, talk to me in class tomorrow if you can, if you're there tomorrow. And we'll make sure that you are in good, solid standing for your test on Friday. And that is all. I hope you have a great day.